We're going to show how to make a chess piece. I'll show how to make a pawn because there's a lot to that. And you want to streamline that because you have 16 of those to make if you're going to make a full chess set. So we start off with a square stock. And I know we've had other lathe people say, oh, don't knock the corners off because it's not worth the time. Well, I've had enough of them split that I like to start out with an octagonal cross section. The easiest way to do that is take it to the table saw, and here's an easy way to set it up. Set your blade at 45 degrees, raise it up enough that you can get your blank right there on the table saw, and you take that and move the fence right up to it. That is a quick and easy way to get an octagonal cut, and I'll show you how that goes. Okay, I'm going to lower the blade because I don't like to have all of that blade sticking out for my fingers to hit it. So, very simple. Here we go. Take one pass, turn it 90 degrees, take another pass, another pass, and another pass. And there you have perfect octagon to work with. So now let's go over to the lathe. I have a real eclectic collection of tools that I use. These two are pretty standard. Actually, these are Craftsman. I had these from when I was 15 years old, so that would make these about 60 years old. A standard parting tool, got to keep that sharp. A small skew chisel, and then I've learned to use carbide lathe tools. I've got the round one, which is very good for rough cutting. This is sort of a square. It's a little bit rounded on the tip, and you can change positions when one side gets dull. It's good for getting a nice smooth cut. And the other carbide is a detail one, so you can get into close places. So the first thing I did was this, and this is a very cheap little chisel set that, I don't know, I think my father gave them to me because he had no use for them. A simple little bead that happens to work for this project, and then just another little detail chisel. Then I've got an assortment of calipers, and the calipers, the dividers. This is a divider. The dividers give me my dimension along the way. So I've got these set, so the first one measures the bottom, then I've got the next one that measures the next offset, then I've got the next one which gives me the top of the collar. So here's the pawn that we're going to make. In order to not have to set every dimension and every diameter as you're doing each piece, I have laid out all of my calipers and dividers here in order in which we're going to use them. So you can see that I will take the calipers and measure the diameter. I'll take the dividers to measure a distance and that kind of thing. I've got them all laid out ahead of time, and that'll save time when you're doing 16 of these. All right, now we have a piece that I've made octagonal, cut to the right length for a pawn, drilled a hole about 1 inch deep that matches the depth of my screw chuck. Simply screw it on, Get it good and tight. Bring up the tailstock. Which I almost don't need, but I won't use it at the very end. Okay? So we turn it on. First, we round it off. Okay? This is that round carbide tool. Cuts very smoothly. Seems like I've got all the flats gone. Let's stop the lathe and check. Looks like there's no more flat. Okay, so we're good to go. I want to raise up my tool rest, and I have my simple beading tool that I push into here. And get a full bead. I've got a small tool that I like to use just to get into that corner. I could use a skew chisel, but that's pretty tricky in tight quarters like that. So this gives me a nice round over. Okay? Then I take my first dividers, mark off the first shoulder. Then I use the parting tool to part down to the diameter. Give me a little space so I don't burn the parting tool. And take my first calipers. A little bit more. There we go. That's to the correct diameter. And now I can work some of the material out. This is just for clearance, but this is the actual shape. And my round carbide seems to work good to make the little OG curve. Now I know just about how much, just by eye, that shoulder should be, and then I round this off. Now you can see a nice pleasing OG on the base. Okay? Then I take my next divider. I like to always check to make sure that I grabbed the right dividers. So there is where I cut the next shoulder with the parting tool again. This is all waste here. Parting tool is getting hot, I can feel it. And so here's the diameter I'm working towards. I like to use this square carbide, but this is way too big. Now's the time to get rid of a lot of that material so that it's not in my way. What I want to do is cut it down to the diameter of the collar, this diameter. So that is my preset diameter. Okay. I've got a ways to go. See how nicely those carbides cut? Really get nice shavings off of it. Not quite there yet. A little more. Just a little more. Okay. There we are. Now, the next thing I want to do is mark where that collar goes. So it's the top of the collar. Give myself another mark. And now, with the detail tool, I start to shape the top of that collar. I just need to know what that diameter is. And now the round is the perfect dimension for making that cove. Now I'll do part of it because I need to get rid of this material here. You can see it taking shape now. Let me finish this. I want to get just about a 1/16 of an inch on that collar, and I want about the same offset. I want the same offset at this point as I have at this point, which I've accomplished. So now I use the square carbide to finish off a nice sweep from that collar, that offset, to the other one. There should be a nice curve to it. See? Now you can really see the pawn take shape. Okay? Got to be careful in those tight quarters. Okay. Now we start shaping down to the ball. And what I want to do is get down to the diameter of the ball. So this is the diameter I'm working towards. Just about there. There, that's it. Now I take this, bring it into there. Now we can move the tailstock away and just do some shaping. The ball. And here's where I use my special tool. Now I've I've got a pretty good sphere right there. So then we might take some of these burrs off. And if I didn't ruin it, I've got a good piece. Let's take a look. Well, I might be able to clean that up a little bit. But that's pretty good pawn right there. And see if we can take that off. Let's get the tailstock away so I don't get speared by it. Okay. And my rubber wrap helps. That's the very same thing you use to open a jar that's stuck. There you go. Pawn. And let's see, how close is it to that one? Not bad. Once we've got the piece turned on the lathe, we want to finish it. I like a simple finish. I like shellac, but we also need to sand it down. So I have different grits of sandpaper, fabric back, so it's flexible, that I can take right here, sand out any scratches in the wood, and you can see how I can just work that into small places. Okay, use my finger to fit into the cove, work on all areas. So that's kind of a coarse piece. Here's a very fine 400 grit sandpaper. And so you can see I can get all that down, get it so it's nice and smooth. But then the real nice finishing is 4X steel wool. So with the steel wool, I can really polish it up. Okay? Now there's two kinds of finish that I'm kind of playing with that I like. Once I get it polished up nice, I will turn it off, take a small brush and shellac, just dip it in a little bit and shellac it like so. Just turn it with the crank and put several coats on it. And that gets a nice good seal on it. But there's another finish that I really am liking that's not as shiny as just shellac, and that is wax in the steel wool. And you watch as I run that, you're putting just a very fine coat of wax on with the steel wool. And it gives you a very nice satin finish on the piece. Very nice to touch because it's very smooth and it doesn't have that heavy look of finish. It's almost like buffed wood with a nice finish on it. And that's about all I do. And again, unscrew it right off. One thing maybe I overlooked was if you want to shellac it and you give it several coats, it only takes about 15 minutes between coats. You can do several coats in a short time, then buff that, and then you could polish it with the steel wool and wax. Now, I have found that I have gone to the steel wool with wax even without shellac. And so those are a couple options that you can do.